Yes, ma'am.
Tell me, who's familiar with minimum standards? You are? Okay, slightly. So, yesterday, midday yesterday, we got the new version of minimum standards that took place as of yesterday. So March 1st, there were some new minimum standards. Basically, they're pretty much the same, except there are some inserts about certain things that have been changed about the care of the children and about our role in communication. So we're going to kind of go over that with you. The first thing you need to know is that these minimum standards, you're the first ones to get them hot off the press. This is March 2023. So take them to your school because every school should have a fresh copy. And of course, they're always online, right? So you can always go back there and refresh. And if you do not know at your school or any school that you're visiting who the state rep is, they work hand in hand with you. So you know if you've been to the school, you've seen state boards, and one of the license criteria is to know where the postings are and to know where the licensing inspections and things like that are. And because of your role, and you will always be up front, it's very important that you familiarize yourself with these items, right? Your first priority is parent interactions and making sure the school runs, because if you don't know the minimum standards of what to expect, then you can only perform so well, right? So we want you to have these bases as a guideline, as a directive of what must be happening, and then elevate to our standards, right? But the bare minimum has to be happening. So if you don't know those, we're going to learn this today, okay? So in your minimum standards, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just kind of breeze through here. I did my homework last night, which I said is brand new. So I wrote down some page numbers we're going to go over. But your job is not my job to read this to you. Your job is to read this book, right? And to know it and to be able to act upon it when something's not going right in your school. Okay. You have to be thinkers, quick on your feet, and put processes into place, and do it happily with a smile, of course, right? And the biggest thing we have sometimes with morning routines and then afternoon routines, because of everybody's schedule being a little bit different, are ratios. And there should be a system in each classroom. Where are the opening classrooms? Who comes in there? What time they come in there? And what's the next classroom to open? Every school should have a system of depending on their parents' needs, right? And every time during the year, it could shift because parents have different jobs, right? Or they have different priorities. Maybe they come in late, so you know that this teacher maybe can be scheduled. We can alternate their schedule. Or a lot of cases, because our teachers drive in, or our parents live in the outskirts and they might be going early, then teachers' schedule should be changed to accommodate what we need. So I know that a lot of people are hired for maybe 7 to 4 or 8 to 5, but on their agreement, which all of you have signed as well, it's to be flexible for the needs of the school, right? So they don't work for that center director. They work for Rhonda and Stepping Stone School, right? So that is the governing board, if you will. That's the permit holder that we have to be there for our families. So it's all about, when you're talking to teachers, about being there for the families and meeting their needs, since we're providing that service to them. So if they say that I just absolutely cannot do it, say this is what the school needs. Okay. Your level of doing that, you probably want to take it to your principal or your assistant principal until your principal doing that, or you have that connection with staff. Okay. But they should always have respect for you, not their best friend. I know we want to do staff thing, staff things for that to make them feel appreciated, which is great. But you still have to be able to hold the line, toe the line, and hold them accountable. And there's a way to do that. But not knowing these is going to be, you're going to be like leading them blind, letting them run their center without the standards being upheld. Okay, so I'm going to just go through. So it says on page 19, the permit holder. The permit holder, of course, is Rhonda Paver, Stepping Stone School. The point that I want to make on that is that when the state comes it's not that we're running around being scared. We should be walking with them because a lot of times they interpret things differently. And where I'm going with that is if we're cited for supervision or anything in the classroom or being over ratio, if it's a continual thing and how that day is going, the center can be cited for supervision. The director can be cited for not knowing what her staff were doing or not knowing what's going in her on her building supervision. And then Ron Paver can be the same thing because she's a permit holder. He's supposed to know what's going on. We are her tentacles. We are the liaisons out there for her to make sure things are happening properly, as well as her administrative staff and the teachers. The teachers know what they should be doing and shouldn't be doing. And sometimes they just kind of get a little lackadaisical or kind of set in their ways and they're in their own little world, but the expectations have to be there. They will be grateful for that because we run a program and we're going to promise to deliver what we say. And that's for our staff too. We want them to be on the same higher level of thinking that we are as a company. Okay. So my point with that is that if we're not paying attention to what's going on, we could be cited for 3 different things. I mean, 3 times for the same thing because we're not paying attention and knowing what's going on in the building. Okay. Everybody has their own school that you've been assigned to, correct?
Yes.
Do you know the principal and then the assistant principal and then you, or is it a seasoned teacher that, like, if somebody's not there, if the director or the assistant director is not there, who's the next person in charge? Okay, you have to, so your staff have to know that too. So there again, you have to have that aura of leadership about yourself and accountability measures and appreciation. Always have all those together to encompass when you deliver a message or when you're walking around thinking on your feet, making things happen with a smile, with a cloth, with cleaning. You know, you're the role model as well, right?
Yes.
If children are crying, you're stepping in, you're singing, you're doing puppets, you're saying, let me see you do the same thing. See how easy that was? That's all he needed, right? They can't just be sitting there and rocking in the chair or sitting or one thing I see a lot of on their tablet, right? Like they're so busy checking off here or doing something like this that they're not engaged with the children. So you can say, you know, you can take that side of the table and engage with them as you're entering staff, or maybe we can do that in a few minutes, or let me help you do that. What are you doing? I can enter that for you, or let me do a reading time with your children while you do that. Next time, if you need help with that, call me, type of thing. Okay. So permit holder, that level that can be held accountable is all the way to the top, right? And so we want to make sure that all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed. Anybody at Brody? No? Okay. I just say that because Brody has a lot more state visits lately because there's been some ratio issues or supervision issues. And so sometimes that will happen depending on your school that you're at and the citations you had and how long the school's been there and the track record, if you will, with the state of how many state visits you're going to get as an unannounced visit. But if we have a concern from a parent or from a staff member or whomever might call in, and we don't want staff members to be calling, we want to have that trust that they come to us first, like, I'm over ratio, I need you to fix my classroom type of thing. Then you need to be on that and respect that too. If a parent calls with a concern, or if there's an injury of a child that was reported or that they report, they will come in as well. And so they may interview staff and they will always look at ratios. They will always ask who's the youngest and who's the oldest in the classroom, because that's how you determine the ratios. And your teachers need to know that. So you as leaders in the school need to be asking them the same question when you walk in, but don't really ask in front of parents. So that's kind of like personal business. You can count and just go check their name to face, or you can look on their tadpoles to make sure that it's correct. They're kind of learning links. But there's always ways. But when you go in and you do ask them, they should not be looking around and counting or stopping to count. They need to know immediately. Yes, ma'am.
I was going to say, Miss Liz, the director at AW Grimes, there's actually a check sheet that she gives me every morning. It's like I have to check 4 separate times throughout the day. And as soon as the teachers see me walk in with that clipboard, they already know I have 10 students. This is the oldest.
So see how smart that is, because that's preparing them to be success. That's preparing you to know what's going on in the school. If you see somebody else going on, how many that they can have, in the next, within the next check, right? So that is Liz being smart, putting a process into place to make sure everybody's successful. And nobody minds that you're doing that. They are expecting it, right? So if they know that you're watching and looking and helping and there for support, because in actuality, that is supporting them, because if they get 2 more children, they're going to be over, and they know, well, she knows that. Why isn't she coming to help me, type of thing, right? Then that builds a stronger community of success for our children and our families. Okay. So that type of thing, to be able to think through there's some sort of difficult situation in your school, hence gossip, which is we're no tolerant on gossip, but how you manage that is to really be able to reflect back on how can I handle that differently? How can I make a change every day? Okay. So that's a good example of putting processes into place. And we've done that for many years. There's probably many forms and many checklists that you can ask about, or create one yourself that's going to work for you, because it has to work for you and your center, but within our guidelines, of course. Okay. On page 24, the next one I'm going to go over is notifying licensing and notifying parents. So this is important, because if there is a child with an injury that seeks medical help, like has to go get stitches or something like that, then our job is to fill out an incident. The state incident report is different from the stepping stone just incident report. It's the state incident report that the parent has to sign, and that we call the state hotline, or we call our licensing rep and say, this happened, because that's something we have to report to the state. Anything that renders your school unsafe for any reason. I mean, it could be that, God forbid, a child went out the front door. We've had, that type of thing, or a child was left unattended in the classroom because name to face wasn't checked properly, or a car ran into the building, which we've had that several times too. I know. Different, I know, right? Different scenarios. And there is only once that there's actually children involved, and children at the school. Usually it's when it's closed. Just kind of, we're very crafty in particular about how we set up our schools for that very reason. But some of the campuses we don't build, and we have little control over that, except for what you make do with that. Like, for instance, the last one was Wells Branch. Anybody at Wells Branch?
I wasn't.
Okay. So they had those, they had the pillars in front of every window. That's because a parent, when she was dropping off her girls, she must have hit the brake the gas instead of the brake, and kind of hit the window in the pre-K room. And there were some children in there, but nobody was hurt. It was all fine. But it's still, the point being, something like that happened. We had to call the state, because it could be like an unsafe measure. So we need to make sure that we are on top of that, and we clear the area, and we notify parents, and we clean that up. But for something that might happen at the school that's less severe than that, but still much worse on safety measures for a child. If a child was left in the classroom or left outside because they did not do the name to face correctly. Who knows what could happen to a child that might be left out there, right? So that's something that we have to report. And when we do report those things, like I said, there's a form to fill out. Your area supervisor should know as well. Your director should do that, because we want to make sure that we're protecting the company and everything that we write, because documentation is important. And we don't want to say a child was left outside unsupervised because the teacher was doing blah blah blah. That all doesn't matter, right? The child being left alone outside for however many minutes it might be, and then have the parents sign it. So we want to be accurate in what we're saying, but we don't want to be so harsh and blaming somebody on paper. Okay, because we're going to hold our teachers accountable in a way that we need to make that happen. Okay, so you'll see on page 24 and every page, you see after the heading, it says you must notify as soon as possible. Under number 1, that would be safe or unsanitary for a child, is a medium high. So every standard has a weight to it. And if we have so many weights that are high or medium high within a 2-year span, you may be put on probation, the center themselves, where they come more often. And you have to put different processes into place. That's why we like to create our own checklist. If there's something that we deem that might need to be fixed, and we need to have a process in place and let everybody on the same page, do it before anything happens. That's why we need you guys to be thinking and always putting processes in place. So like if you get to number 6, and that's a high one, and that is forgetting a child in a vehicle or playground, or not preventing a child from wandering away from the child care center, because that is high risk, right? So those type of things are looked at more harshly, and they will be out very quickly on those type of things to do an investigation. The medical emergencies that they must notify parents about, that's just on the next page. So since we are partnering with our parents, we want to make sure that they know everything that's going on in the school, right? If there is a bump or a bruise or a bite or a scratch, or just a little bumped knee, know who your parents are, and do they want to have that phone call. Some parents might say, you don't need to call me for every little thing, but I appreciate it, right? Mm-hmm. But if you don't call them for every little thing, then you're not going to know that. And they're going to be appreciative, because some parents, most parents, a lot of parents like to know every little thing, mm-hmm. because it's hard to walk in and see your child with a Band-Aid and not know what happened, because they missed that part of the day for them. Mm-hmm. And there's more anxiety. Bigger than that, if you have a toddler, 2-year-old, or maybe even older, that has biters in it, that has a biter, and there's one child that's always getting bitten, right? And of course, when that parent shows concern, or not even shows concern, you know that as soon as something's said, that child is probably bit. Your job is to call the parent and say, I hate to report this, but this is what we're doing. You did get bit again. No child wants to walk in with a big bite mark or find a bite mark during bath time, right? If there is a child crying in a classroom when you walk in, something is going on with that child. If your teacher say, Mom just left, he just always cries and needs a minute, then they need to be comforting him. And they should be looking at that child, especially if it's a toddler too, right? Because if you didn't see the parent just walk by, you might think, well, I haven't seen her, so is that really true? Or did this little friend come give him a big bite kiss or something when they came in? But always look for things. Anything that there's an injury, like they bumped their head for any reason. I just saw a report that 2 children ran into each other and bumped their head. So that could be, depending on the severity of it, or where they hit each other at. The parents need to know that. So any type of head injury or anything on the face, or things that they're going to really see, or that they're bleeding, like the teeth, you want to call the parents for sure immediately. If they don't want to be bothered all the time, make sure you have the incident report. You need to have the incident report anyway. So what happens with the incident reports, you've all seen them, like the double copy, the yellow and white copy. So those are written. The teacher should be calling one of you guys immediately to go back there and look at the child, even if it's a little thing, to sign off on it. You can determine whether you're calling the parent or not and sign off, and if the parent was notified, just put yes or no. Then the white copy goes to the child's cubby, and you take the yellow copy up there. So we need to be immediate on that, because too many times parents will say, well, what happened? You can say, well, I know that there was a report written, but then we failed to carry it through, right? To make sure the parent received that. So just know how your center is handling those situations, and if it needs to be better, then that's what you're there for, okay? For page 26, we did that one. So we're going to do page 28. So how many of you have been in infant rooms? Probably everybody every day, almost, or you will be, right? You all signed off on the safe sleep policy. You understand what the safe sleep policy is and what can and cannot be done. No swaddling, no sleeping unless they're in a crib. Like if they fall asleep on a boppy, or just because they fall asleep wherever, they're to be put there as soon as possible. I've had state reps tell me that I was there for more than 10 minutes. When they walk by, they just observe, like maybe go in the infant room, walk by the infant room through the picture window and see a child sleeping. And then they'll go do their little check and come back. And if the child's still sleeping, we're going to get cited for it, because she can't say that they were moved as soon as possible. They are never left in a restricted device, which would be a high chair. One of the bouncy seats that has a restrictor thing. Some of the little seats have the little belt too. They cannot be left in there for more than 30 minutes, and they should not be sleeping in there or with any restricted device. I do remember I walked into a school one morning, and a parent had dropped their child off because he went to sleep in his car seat. So just left the child in the car seat in a room. And the dad might have said, well, he didn't get very much sleep last night, so he's finally sleeping. I'm not going to disrupt him. the teacher should at that point say, well, let me try to get him up and put him in his bed because it's much more comfortable sleeping in the bed. She doesn't have to cite anything for him, but she needs to still do the right thing according to the standards that govern us, right? So always know what those are. Again, reading through this and making sure that you're doing that correctly is important. Never swaddling, nothing in cribs. It has to be a bare crib. A bare crib for under 12 months is nothing but a tight-fitting sheet. Okay? Yes, ma'am.
This might be a silly question, but what is
Swaddling. Okay, so let's say we have a baby, and a lot of the hospitals do this, and young mothers do that, or mothers in general. Even grandma, so maybe I do that too with my when they're young, because they're so tight in your womb. When they're little, you kind of get a blanket and you swaddle them a little bit tight, so they still all comfy and cozy in their blanket. That's swaddling.
Oh,
Swaddling is wrapping them up so they have no free motion of their hands and legs. Okay, because hands and legs will save them even if they're the smallest babies, right? Because they might struggle and move, right? If they can't move, they can't do anything. So this is preventative of SIDS, of the sudden infant death syndrome. Okay, so that's why we don't swaddle at all. There is a form for parents to fill out for a doctor to have to sign if they're going to allow anything like that to happen. On the form, it has to be written like a prescription, if you will. Like the doctor says why it has to be done and for the length of duration it can be done. You know, how many times a day. It cannot be just a continuous thing for the safety of the child. But we don't swaddle whatsoever. Okay. In the crib, the tight fitting sheet, we had to buy certain sheets for our cribs because you have to buy what's going to fit the crib. So if parents are bringing their sheets, you can give them the dimensions of the mattress that would be made for those and have them do that way, because they might not like our laundry soap or something, because if they bring the sheets like a regular crib mattress, it's going to be a little bit loose. And what that is that if the child is able to turn themselves over, they could have a loose sheet up against their mouth and it could prohibit their breathing. Okay. If they have anything in their crib, like a little bear that has a heartbeat in it, it could suffocate them too. Right? Because they move around sometimes. Yeah. So if they really want that type of sound machine, it can be clipped on the outside of the crib. There's ways around that, right? Nothing can go in the crib except for a tight fitting sheet. The sheet cannot be so tight though, and this is for your observations, that it curls up like this. Because it's so tight, it's pulling the four corners up. I've seen that. And if you just go in there and pop it and make it fit right, it's going to be okay. But just to be aware of that when you're walking through infant rooms, because infant care is a critical component of child care. Every age group is critical, but these babies are pretty helpless, and that's all we have to be and do things for them and be more aware. If the child has to be 6 months or older and be able to hold their bottle before you can hand them a bottle for them to feed themselves. And you never put a bottle in a crib. Never at all. If your hands are so busy and you're down on the floor with other children doing other things, you can put a bobby pillow, and if they can hold their own bottle and they are over 6 months, that's okay. If you have a free hand, you must be holding a child, even if they're 8 months or 9 months. You should be holding them and rocking them and giving them that one-on-one attention. Things like this that we get cited for infant care, it's high radar, and we also get charged monetary fees for these citations. So it's imperative that the staff in the infant room are always engaged and always knows what's going on and have their platinum learning week set up for the children's needs and have all the information in there. So the All About Me's, you've seen the All About Me's in the infant care, in the infant room. Those are the little sheets that say when the baby eats, how often, some of the things that they do. That piece of paper has to be initialed and signed off every 30 days from parents until that child is 12 months old. We say 12 months old. The actual rule is eating table food. Okay. If we just say 12 months old, then our 12 months old mark also means that they don't have to be in a crib. They can lay on a mat, whether they're walking or not. So the 12 months is just a safer zone for us. So we would prefer to do it until they're 12 months, every 30 days. So as an administrator in the building how to make that happen is that on the 1st of every month or the 6th of every month, whatever you want to choose, that is, you make sure that your staff know that they need to check off on to have the parents fill out the new one for the first year of life. Okay. And parents might think, I just did that too long ago. Say, yeah, but it's a state standard that we need to abide by. If you want to keep it the same, I can recopy it, or you can sign it for me, or whatever. That has to be their signature, and they're really not going to put a fight about it because they're going to be appreciative that you're doing that. They might not have time to do it, so take it home and bring it back to me tomorrow. But then your job is to follow up on that. So if you do not have a means to that you have a spiral notebook, or that you have some sort of thing that you take notes on, even if it's in the notes in your phone later that you can go back and check on, you need to set that up for yourself, because you know that you get so busy in those schools that you're going to be multitasking, and you need to be able to come circle right back around to where you left off and get all those connections. That's important as leaders, spanking people in our buildings. Okay. So all of the infant criteria is highly important that you do that, because that is one of the biggest changes over the past 5 years, I'd say, in standards is the infant care criteria. So know what those are. And then our criteria above that is that there should be no silence in the classroom. They should be murmuring words to these children, engaged with them without more than 10 seconds of silence in the entire classroom. Did you guys know that? So you need to make sure that that's happening. If not, you're going to be that person that goes in there and you hold those babies, and then you give that guy, then you do that, and then you give that dialogue. Hi, Rhonda.
Good morning. Hi, Brett and Sherry, everyone.
Yes.
Good morning. It's nice and cool in here.
It's fine.
So, hi.
We're just talking about minimum standards. We're getting into it a little
What a
bit.
great group. So the original plan was that I'm responding to the day. The original plan was that they were here until 1. I don't think that's going to be necessary in terms of your time frame today, that we have some things to do in our schools respectively, but I want you to get this. I wanted some minutes with you. What is the predicted time frame? So
We can
adjust.
yeah, we're only down like this is all the new stuff.
Okay.
So we're just down to maybe right there.
And Heather is where?
But she opened the school with me at Mueller. She was there.
Was she staying there?
She was supposed to be coming when she could.
Okay. Well, she has background in this too.
She does.
So that would be, yeah, great. So who else was expected? Anisha, Dominic, which is fine.
And Jessica's out.
Okay. Well, all the geniuses are here.
They are, and they're learning.
How are you? And you? Oh, good. Sit up very straight so you oxygenate your brains. Remember that the impression that you give as a first impression is profoundly important. I'm just going to pop in for a quick second to give a little bit of background to the importance of this standard and an elevation discussion that I had yesterday with Acacia that I wanted to be sure I have with each one of you. The minimum standards piece is, of course, a grounding principle together with Stepping Stone School being a proprietary operation. One of the important concepts for you to begin to understand in a deep way is that we are also running a very serious business, okay? So much of your training and emphasis, and all is well and true, has been about the presentation of the concept with the PR piece and the parent experience, the child experience, the presentation of our program. I see it being elevated tremendously because of your work. So remember to continue with your self-improvement dedication to articulation, to meeting a child at eye level, to an understanding that this is human care. At the same time, you are also protectors. You are protectors of doors. You are protectors of individuals either coming or going from our sacred church / schools. And I always call it church because I believe of the sacredness of what's going on inside and as we enter the property. And that also gives you a connotation of concept that helps you march with the kind of dignity and leadership that I want you to have. So I gave the example to some of them earlier. In church, we wouldn't spend time in silly talk with each other. We would know we were there for a purpose and we would be respectful. So often we find our teachers clumping on playgrounds and doing silly talk and having sort of what I would consider below the bar of what happens to children and people at a cellular level, okay, in information. And I'm reading a very interesting book called It's in Our Bones right now. And it's about all of our early experiences as they predict and inform who we become. I happen to believe we're really big time in that, which is why when teachers are talking over the heads of children and not thinking that that is just raining on those children cellularly, they're wrong. That's why a bad attitude, that's why a negative approach is so the opposite of what we feel we have been gifted to give. Okay. Liability and protection of the children and the organization is your number one job in addition to 100% enrollments. Okay. Children, we have great security systems. Children have tendencies to want to follow their parents out the door because they have anxiety, or they see, God forbid, a swimming pool, and they want to go to it. You are protectors in addition to all of the other layers of this. What does that mean? That also means that as we warmly welcome everyone, you become able to identify who is coming from your building, right? And in the moment, and this could be another reason that you're there for safety and security, okay? Shifting your brains a little, by shifting you a little bit to another layer, okay? Our parents are concerned about safety and security. Unfortunately and sadly, that is the world in which we live. Your presence assures them peace of mind, trusted relationships. However, you haven't been really properly advised yet on what to do in a serious situation, were it be that someone tried to enter one of our buildings for an improper reason. Okay, sure, we have custody hearings, sure, we have mad parents at each other, right? Okay, that's another piece and parcel of why you have your placement. And again, when a parent goes, well, why did they hire a teacher? For you, you say, I'm here to support the admin so they can train our teachers, and I'm here to ensure safety and security. And you're going to they're going to fall all over themselves saying, thank you, God. And thank you. Okay. And we've had these little itty bitty things bubble up. Lisa is giving you the biblical analysis of the important features of the governance. And I told you only besides hospitals regulated in the state of Texas to protect children. That's the point of all of this. That's why the state does what this is. That's why it's such a heavy hand. Thank you.
Parts of it all. Thank you. Okay. So she is, I know. So back to minimum standards. Okay. So your job again is to read this and to notice things in here, and then go find out where they're at in your building, what you can do differently. If there's a process that needs your attention or somebody to help you, then you reach out for help, your administrator team or the team here, okay? So required postings. These are things, this is basic, this is the stuff that the state will come in. The required postings on page 30, you should go in your school and you should look at those. So anything that's required, my expectation of you guys is to figure it out yourselves to find where they're at. And if you don't see them, ask your director, because you need to know where these things are at, okay? And there has to always be, they have to be updated. So make sure they're updated, like the employee list. Are you on the new employee list? They should be on there. If not, say, where can I find the employee list? I can update it, right? To make sure that everybody's up there. That is a required posting. So look for little things like that. The menu should have changed yesterday. It's required by the state to have the menu posted. Where is it? Is it still February up or is it March up? So ask for the same up front. So there should be a main one up front visual to parents, but every parent board for every school and every classroom in our company have menu on the parent board, okay? And it should be posted. Yes, ma'am.
Should the parent board or teacher board be
inside the classroom or?
It doesn't matter. Each school is a little bit different. So however your setup is, when we open the school is where it will be.
Okay.
So on the parent board is the lesson plan, is the daily schedule, is the critical component, like if we're teaching respect in March, I think it is, to have that up there, and the menu. So on your lesson plans, also lesson plans, updated lesson plans for the state are a requirement. So Stepping Stone has a process where you have a curriculum coordinator named teacher in your school. You should know who that is and what their process is. Most of them have their lesson plan books turned into them on Tuesday or Wednesday. They verify for age appropriate, and then the teacher transfers it to our big plans, and they're up Friday before they leave, or Friday at 2:30. That should be something that you guys are checking. But if you don't know what the process is to get the lesson plans up, then you're not going to be successful in that. Yes, ma'am.
So with the state, I know Miss Liz, she has nicely posted in the front, but
Okay, that's wonderful. Well, that's great. So now everybody will know your name.
Oh,
You'll
yes.
wear it proudly.
Oh,
Is
yeah.
that something great? Okay. So we are back on, for lesson plans. You were asking if they're outdated, if you take that upon yourself or not.
yes, ma'am.
Again, find out who the lesson plan person is. Like ask Liz, like who's the lesson plan coordinator? Because they're outdated lesson plans. Or you can, when it gets to the point, you can talk to them and say, look, how can I help you get that done? Or what's the process? And I can help get the teachers on board with you. Some people have brand new lesson plan people. They might not even have curriculum coordinators, depending on the staffing. In the school, if they're all brand new, maybe nobody's been named curriculum coordinator. That might be you, it might be the assistant, that might be the director. And that just means we need to have that process in place. Okay.
Okay.
So they have to be updated, and they have to be completely filled out, and they should have somebody checking them for age appropriateness. And that can be you as you're walking through. Operational policies, you know that everybody has, parent handbooks look like this. They're in your schools. If you haven't read one, you should read that. Everybody has one that's tabbed like this. The tabs are from Christina Leander. If you haven't met her, she's wonderful. She's a great leader. So all these colorful tabs you see on them are what state looks for. Like they need to see this policy. Then you can just pull this one out that would probably be in this binder that you need to find in your school. You need to ask where the state regulatory binder is. Okay. Again, if the state walks in and they need to see inspections and things like that, this is where you're going to find them. They all look the same, and they'll be in your director's office. So know where it is and familiarize yourself with it too. Okay. Because one of the other things in here that you can always be helpful with is that like the fire and the health visits and things like that happen annually. They don't always happen automatically. Like we had to call and had to pay a fee for them to come and do that sometimes. So it's our job is to make sure that we're within that year before it gets done. So like 30 days out, so know what they are, what the dates are, and ask your administrator how she keeps track of it, so that way you can be helpful to her too. Okay, because we're all a team. Did you get it on?
Yeah.
Okay.
Turn it.
Okay, well, I'm glad that it fits you well. That's great. Good job. Okay, so we're going to talk about when children leave, the record keeping. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, go right ahead. Yeah, you go right ahead. So for record keeping, when children leave, we want to file the files away. You want to keep them for 3 months after they leave, but you don't need to keep them in your bin. Does everybody know where the children's files are in your school?
Yes.
Okay, because usually they're depending on who your director is. Some of them keep them in alphabetical order for all the names, and some of them keep them in classrooms. And so depending on how she does that, so you'll know what to do. I find it easier to put them in classrooms so that way you can just pull that one classroom out, because what you also need to have is when we have fire drills and things like that, you have to have the record. You have to have records with you, right? Because if something actually happens, you have to have the parent information. Okay. Right. So Tadpoles has some. So some of it has the phone number on Tadpoles, or the director's iPad has access to ProCare and things like that. So as long as that's all kept up to date, that can also be taken too. Okay. But the filing system, you have to be helping maintain, or everybody should be responsible for making sure immunizations are correct, that we have everything we need for people enrolling. Like if you're doing a tour of welcoming them, and somebody hands you, so you know you're the greeter, right? Welcoming our new families in, and they hand you the enrollment page. And maybe your administrator's not there at that time, or she's in a classroom doing something. Every blank should be, so on the enrollment form, every blank should be filled in. Basically, it's really basic. If you have not read the enrollment form yet for a child enrolling, do so. Take the time to know what's in there and what's required, okay? Immunization records, if you don't know, like if they ask you about, I don't know what the next series is for my child. Do any of you have young children?
Yes.
Okay, so you know that when they're young, you have immunizations quite often, right? And if not, that's okay, because in the back of your book, there are the last two, well, it's back here on this one. So this just shows you the age group and the immunizations they should have. So it's a helpful little piece